spirit, soul and body. Foreword. Why humanity no longer knows itself. Humanity's deepest confusion today is not about the world, society, or even God, it is about itself. The widespread inability to distinguish clearly between spirit, soul, and body has fractured human self-understanding and, with it, responsibility, dignity, and inner peace. This confusion did not arise suddenly. It unfolded gradually, through subtle shifts in thinking that replaced clarity with comfort and law with interpretation. Originally, human beings possessed an instinctive awareness of inner order. Life was experienced as lawful, purposeful, and meaningful. Spirit was sensed as origin, the soul as living expression, and the body as a temporary instrument. Over time, however, this sober perception weakened. Symbols, once meant to point toward reality, were mistaken for reality itself. Metaphors hardened into doctrines, and living knowledge turned into inherited belief. What was once understood through inner perception became repeated without comprehension. As this decline progressed, belief, psychology, and mysticism were increasingly mixed without discernment. Belief offered emotional security without demanding inner change. Psychology explained behavior while denying the spirit. Mysticism promised experience without responsibility. Each claimed to illuminate the human being, yet together they deepened confusion by blurring essential distinctions. Spirit was reduced to morality or faith. The soul was mistaken for emotion or personality. The body was alternately worshipped or despised. In losing order, humanity lost itself. The danger of this mixture lies not merely in intellectual error, but in its practical consequences. When spirit is confused with belief, responsibility weakens. When the soul is reduced to emotion, character becomes unstable. When the body is treated as identity, earthly life loses direction. Confusion always leads to evasion, and evasion produces suffering. Not as punishment, but as lawful consequence. The Grail Message does not enter this landscape as another system competing for belief. It does not seek to fascinate, console, or dominate. Its task is restoration. It restores order by separating what must be distinguished and uniting what belongs together. It clarifies rather than persuades. It corrects without condemning. It enlightens by pointing back to law, not by inventing new explanations. In this sense, the Grail Message is not a doctrine but a key, one that unlocks what has long been obscured by misunderstanding. It calls humanity away from speculation and back to sober recognition. It asks no one to believe blindly, but to observe honestly. Where confusion thrives on emotion and imagination, it restores clarity through structure and responsibility. This book follows that same rhythm: clarification, enlightenment, and correction. It does not aim to elevate the reader spiritually, but to ground the reader in reality. It does not promise experiences, but understanding. And it does not seek to answer curiosity, but to awaken self-recognition. For only when a human being truly knows what spirit, soul, and body are, and how they relate, can life be lived consciously, responsibly, and in peace. Introduction. What people think spirit, soul, and body are. Few misunderstandings have harmed humanity as deeply as the confusion surrounding spirit, soul, and body. These three are spoken of daily in religion, philosophy, psychology, and casual conversation, yet they are rarely understood. What once formed a clear inner order has become a tangled web of assumptions, beliefs, and emotional interpretations. The result is a humanity that speaks confidently about itself while remaining inwardly disoriented. In modern thinking, spirit is often reduced to belief or morality. To be spiritual is equated with holding certain convictions, adhering to ethical ideals, or participating in religious practices. Spirit becomes something one believes in rather than what one is rooted in. This reduction strips spirit of its living reality and turns it into an abstract concept or moral badge. As long as belief replaces recognition, responsibility weakens, because belief can be changed or abandoned without inner consequence. True spirit, however, is not an opinion or a code of conduct, it is a living origin that demands alignment, not agreement. The soul, meanwhile, is commonly confused with emotions and personality. Psychology has contributed valuable observations about human behavior, yet by denying the spiritual origin of the soul, it has narrowed the soul to a bundle of feelings, memories, and reactions. Emotions rise and fall, personalities shift, and moods fluctuate, yet none of these define the soul itself. When the soul is mistaken for emotion, inner instability is normalized. People excuse destructive behavior as, just how I feel, and character dissolves into impulse. The soul, in truth, is far deeper and more enduring than emotional states. It is the field in which thoughts, feelings, and will form and take shape. The body, finally, is either treated as identity or as enemy. In one extreme, the body is worshipped. Appearance, pleasure, performance, and longevity become measures of worth. Life's meaning is confined to sensory experience, and death becomes the ultimate terror. In the opposite extreme, the body is despised as a prison or obstacle to spirituality, something to be denied, punished, or escaped. Both views are distortions. When the body is idolized, the soul is neglected. When the body is rejected, responsibility for earthly life is avoided. In reality, the body is an instrument, neither master nor enemy, but a tool entrusted to the human being for development within matter. This triple confusion fractures human life at every level. When spirit is reduced to belief, inner orientation is lost. When the soul is reduced to emotion, self-discipline collapses. When the body is mistaken for identity, existence becomes shallow and fearful. Responsibility is shifted outward, to fate, to society, to biology, or to divine forgiveness. The human being no longer stands upright within life, but oscillates between guilt and indulgence, fear and ambition, belief and doubt. The Grail Message exposes this confusion not to accuse, but to awaken. It shows that order is not oppressive, but liberating. Spirit, soul, and body each have their place, function, and law. When these are recognized, life regains coherence. Responsibility becomes natural rather than burdensome. Freedom arises not from denying structure, but from living within it consciously. This introduction marks the threshold of that clarification. It invites the reader to lay aside inherited definitions and emotional attachments, and to observe freshly. Only by recognizing what these three truly are, and what they are not, can the human being return to inner unity and outward clarity. What follows is not speculation, but illumination grounded in law, offered in the spirit of sober enlightenment and correction. Part 1. Order in Creation. Restoring the foundation before explanation. Chapter 1. Creation is lawful, not arbitrary. Nothing that exists stands by chance, impulse, or divine whim. Creation is lawful in its entirety, from the movement of the stars to the formation of thought, from the growth of a seed to the unfolding of a human life. Law is not an invention imposed upon creation, it is the very condition that allows existence to be stable, comprehensible, and purposeful. Where law is absent, nothing can endure. Modern humanity often recoils from the word law, associating it with restriction, punishment, or loss of freedom. This reaction reveals a deep misunderstanding. Law is not limitation, it is reliability. It is precisely because laws are unwavering that trust, growth, and responsibility are possible. A world without law would not be liberating, it would be uninhabitable. The same applies to inner life. Without law governing thought, desire, and action, the human being becomes fragmented and unstable. Law is the framework that holds creation upright. It ensures that causes produce corresponding effects, that development follows sequence, and that every movement carries consequence. Nothing exists in isolation. Every form, force, and function is interwoven into a coherent whole. This coherence is not oppressive, it is protective. It allows the smallest creature and the greatest system to fulfill their purpose without collision or chaos. Confusion always begins where law is ignored, denied, or replaced by imagination. When humanity ceases to observe how things actually function and substitutes belief, emotion, or personal preference, disorder follows. Spiritual confusion is not mysterious, it is the direct result of stepping outside lawful perception. People then accuse creation of being cruel or incomprehensible, when in truth they have turned away from its clarity. The Grail Message restores this foundation by pointing humanity back to law as the basis of understanding. It does not ask for belief, but for recognition. It does not demand submission, but conscious alignment. Only on this ground can spirit, soul, and body be understood without distortion. Any explanation that ignores law is fantasy, no matter how beautiful or comforting it appears. Chapter 2. The Threefold Nature of the Human Being. The human being is not a symbolic trinity, nor a poetic metaphor. Spirit, soul, and body are distinct realities, each belonging to a different level of creation and each governed by its own laws. Confusion arises not because these are complex, but because they are merged, blurred, or treated interchangeably. The spirit is the highest component of the human being. It is not emotion, belief, or intellect. Spirit is origin, capacity, and direction. It carries the potential for consciousness, responsibility, and recognition of law. Spirit does not think emotionally, nor does it react impulsively. It seeks clarity, truth, and alignment. When spirit leads, the human being stands upright within life. The soul is the intermediary field. It belongs to fine material realms and forms the bridge between spirit and body. Thoughts, feelings, desires, and will take shape within the soul. The soul reflects the orientation of the spirit and transmits its influence downward, or, if neglected, becomes dominated by bodily impulses and external impressions. The soul is not the spirit itself, but its field of expression. The body is the outermost instrument. It belongs to gross matter and allows the human being to act, learn, and develop within the physical world. The body does not think, judge, or decide. It responds. It executes. When treated as identity, it enslaves the soul. When treated as enemy, it is misused and neglected. Only when recognized as instrument does it fulfill its purpose correctly. Separation is essential for understanding. Without clear distinction, responsibility collapses. If emotions are called spirit, impulse is excused. If the body is called self, desire rules unchecked. If the soul is denied, inner accountability vanishes. Merging what must be distinguished creates a fog in which no true growth is possible. The Grail Message insists on clarity because clarity restores dignity. Each component has its task, its limits, and its value. Harmony arises not from confusion, but from lawful cooperation. Chapter 3: Why Humanity Lost Clarity. Humanity did not lose clarity suddenly. It eroded gradually through three dominant distortions: emotional religion, intellectual dominance, and sensory overpowering of perception. Each replaced sober recognition with substitutes that felt easier, safer, or more gratifying. Emotional religion replaced understanding with feeling. Truth was no longer something to be lived and recognized, but something to be felt, defended, or feared. Symbols were taken literally, metaphors hardened into dogma, and fear became a tool of control. Emotion overwhelmed discernment. In such an atmosphere, spirit could no longer lead. It was drowned out by excitement, guilt, hope, and dread. Intellectual dominance followed, dismissing anything not measurable as illusion. The intellect, meant to serve recognition, crowned itself master. Spirit was reduced to psychology, soul to neurology, and responsibility to social conditioning. While this produced technical advancement, it severed humanity from its inner origin. Intelligence expanded, but wisdom withered. At the same time, sensory life grew overpowering. Comfort, stimulation, entertainment, and distraction flooded daily existence. The body's demands became constant and loud, while inner perception weakened from neglect. Silence became uncomfortable. Reflection was avoided. The soul lost depth, and spirit found no space to unfold. These forces combined to obscure the natural order of the human being. What was once instinctively known became foreign. Humanity now searches endlessly for meaning while ignoring the lawful structure that already provides it. The Grail Message does not condemn this condition, it explains it. And explanation is the first step toward correction. Clarity can return wherever sincerity exists. Order can be restored wherever recognition is chosen over habit. This restoration begins not with belief, but with the willingness to see creation, and oneself, as it truly is. Part 2: The Spirit. The core of the human being. Chapter 4: What the Spirit truly is. The spirit is not an idea, a belief system, nor a moral disposition. It is not created by culture, religion, or personal conviction. The spirit is the originating core of the human being, existing prior to earthly birth and independent of bodily life. To call spirit a belief is to confuse recognition with imagination. Spirit exists whether one acknowledges it or not. Spirit does not arise on earth. Earthly life is not its source, but its field of experience. The body is formed through earthly processes. The soul unfolds within fine material laws, but the spirit enters embodiment already bearing potential, orientation, and responsibility. This is why no human begins life as a blank slate. Capacities, inclinations, and limitations are not accidents, they are expressions of prior inner development. Spirit is not emotional. Emotion belongs to the soul. Spirit is not intellectual. Intellect belongs to the brain. Spirit is will in its purest sense. The capacity to recognize law, to choose alignment, and to bear responsibility for consequence. Where spirit leads, clarity emerges. Where it is suppressed, life becomes reactive, fragmented, and confused. The spirit is the bearer of responsibility because it alone can recognize meaning beyond immediacy. It alone can perceive consequence beyond comfort. It alone can stand upright within law without compulsion. This is why spiritual maturity is never automatic. It must be chosen, lived, and sustained. The Grail Message restores the understanding of spirit by stripping away sentimental and mystical distortions. Spirit does not demand worship, exaltation, or escape. It demands uprightness. It demands truthfulness in thought, purity in will, and responsibility in action. Anything less is not spiritual life, but imitation. Chapter 5. The Dormant Spirit in Man. Most human beings live without active spirit consciousness. This does not mean they lack spirit, it means the spirit is dormant, overshadowed by intellect, emotion, and bodily impulse. Dormancy is not punishment, it is consequence. Spirit cannot unfold where it is ignored. The intellect is efficient, fast, and rewarded by society. It organizes, calculates, and defends. Emotion is powerful, immediate, and persuasive. It reacts, desires, fears, and hopes. Together, intellect and emotion can dominate the entire inner life, leaving no space for the quiet clarity of spiritual perception. When this happens, people may speak of spirituality endlessly while never living spiritually. Spiritual perception is sober. It does not excite. It does not flatter. It does not intoxicate. It recognizes quietly and acts consistently. Because modern humanity seeks stimulation, reassurance, or identity, spiritual perception is often mistaken for imagination. People confuse visions, feelings, or mental constructs with awakening, when these are only movements within the soul or intellect. True awakening is not dramatic. It is marked by increased responsibility, sharper self-recognition, and a reduced need for external validation. It brings no sense of specialness. On the contrary, it dissolves illusion and exposes inner disorder. This is why many avoid it unconsciously. The dormant spirit remains patient. It does not force itself forward. Law does not compel awakening, it offers opportunity. Where sincerity exists, spirit can begin to permeate the soul again. Where comfort, fear, or ambition dominate, dormancy continues, sometimes for entire lifetimes. The Grail Message does not promise awakening, it explains the conditions under which awakening becomes possible. Chapter 6. The Task of the Spirit in Embodiment. Spirit incarnates not to escape matter, but to develop through it. Earthly life is not a fall, a test imposed from outside, or a prison to be transcended. It is a field of experience designed to strengthen recognition, responsibility, and clarity through action. Development cannot occur in abstraction. Spirit matures by engaging with limitation, resistance, and consequence. Through work, relationship, decision, and failure, spirit refines its will. Every situation offers opportunity, not for suffering, but for recognition. Avoidance, not difficulty, is what stalls growth. There is no spiritual maturity without responsibility. Responsibility is not burden, it is proof of strength. To take responsibility for one's thoughts, motives, and actions is to align with law. To evade responsibility is to remain childish, regardless of age, belief, or knowledge. Embodiment demands participation. Withdrawal into fantasy, ascetic escape, or spiritual ambition weakens the spirit instead of strengthening it. The spirit grows not by distancing itself from life, but by standing firmly within it, truthful, sober, and alert. The Grail Message corrects the widespread error that spirituality is something added onto life. In truth, spirituality is life lived rightly. Where the spirit fulfills its task, fear diminishes, confusion clears, and dignity returns. Not because life becomes easier, but because it becomes meaningful. The spirit's task is not to shine, dominate, or ascend prematurely. Its task is to become, through alignment with law, through responsibility, and through conscious living. Part 3. The Soul. The mediator between spirit and body. Chapter 7. What the soul really is. The soul is the fine material instrument through which the spirit expresses itself during embodiment. It is neither the body nor the spirit, but the intermediary realm where inner orientation takes form. The soul is real, structured, and lawful, not symbolic or psychological in origin. The soul is often mistaken for personality or emotion alone. While personality traits and emotions appear within the soul, they do not define it. Personality is a surface expression shaped by upbringing and environment. Emotion is movement within the soul, not its essence. The soul itself is the form-giving field that carries tendencies, inclinations, and inner configurations shaped by the individual over time. Every thought, every will impulse, every desire enters the soul and leaves an imprint. The soul gathers these imprints into form. Thus, it becomes a living record of what a person truly is, not what they claim to be. Words and outward behavior may deceive others, but the soul cannot deceive law. Because the soul mediates between spirit and body, its condition determines whether the spirit can influence earthly life clearly. A purified, ordered soul allows the spirit's will to pass through unobstructed. A confused or burdened soul distorts spiritual impulse into emotion, impulse, or intellectual justification. The Grail Message restores the soul to its rightful place, not as an enemy to be suppressed, nor as a master to be indulged, but as a responsible instrument. The soul must be shaped consciously, for it shapes everything that follows. Chapter 8. How the Soul is Formed. The soul is not formed by circumstance, inheritance, or fate imposed from outside. It is formed from within through thought, will, and desire. These are not abstract processes, they are creative forces operating continuously. Every sustained thought builds form. Every repeated desire strengthens structure. Every willful decision reinforces direction. Nothing external determines the soul unless the individual inwardly consents. Hardship does not deform the soul, reaction to hardship does. Blessing does not purify the soul, misuse of blessing corrupts it. Environment offers stimuli, not destiny. Over time, inner life becomes visible. What a person consistently harbors within must eventually express outwardly, in character, health, relationships, and life circumstances. This is not moral judgment, it is lawful unfolding. The soul carries its contents like a seed carries its future plant. Self-deception delays recognition but does not alter formation. People may adopt beliefs, rituals, or moral identities, yet the soul reflects only lived reality. Habitual dishonesty, resentment, fear, or greed form corresponding soul structures regardless of outward appearance. The Grail Message emphasizes sober self-observation. To shape the soul, one must first see it as it is, not as one wishes it to be. Only conscious, sustained inner discipline can alter soul form. There is no external savior for inner neglect. Chapter 9. The Condition of the Soul After Death. At death, the body falls away, but the soul remains intact. Freed from the masking limitations of the physical organism, the soul reveals the true character of the individual. Nothing is added, and nothing is taken away. The soul simply stands as it has been formed. There is no concealment beyond earth. Social roles, reputations, intellectual explanations, and emotional narratives no longer veil inner reality. The soul's form determines its environment naturally, without judgment or decree. Like attracts like. Law places each soul where it belongs by inner affinity. Death does not correct what life neglected. There is no sudden purification, no automatic enlightenment, no external forgiveness that alters soul structure. What was not confronted, transformed, or ordered during earthly life continues unchanged. This is not punishment, it is continuity. The soul remains within the conditions it has created until further development becomes possible. Progress requires recognition, willingness, and lawful opportunity. Without these, stagnation persists. The Grail Message removes comforting illusions about post-earthly rescue. It does so not to instill fear, but to restore responsibility to the present moment. Earthly life is precious precisely because it offers the densest and most effective field for soul shaping. To care for the soul is not morbid or mystical. It is practical, urgent, and unavoidable. The soul is the bridge between spirit and destiny. What one builds there, one inhabits, here and beyond. Part 4. The Body. The Temporary Earthly Instrument. Chapter 10. The body is tool, not identity. The physical body is the outermost garment of the human being, formed from earthly matter and subject to its laws. It is perishable because it belongs entirely to earth. Its cells renew and decay, its strength rises and fades, its functions cease when the allotted time is fulfilled. Nothing in the body points to permanence, and nothing in its nature suggests identity. Confusion begins when the body is mistaken for the self. Modern humanity speaks of being the body rather than having a body. From this error arise fear of aging, terror of death, obsession with appearance, and the frantic pursuit of pleasure. When identity is rooted in what must perish, insecurity becomes unavoidable. Body-centered living reverses order. Instead of serving the inner being, the body dictates desire, rhythm, and direction. Appetite replaces discernment. Sensation replaces meaning. Comfort replaces responsibility. The instrument becomes master, and the human being becomes enslaved to what was meant to serve. The Grail Message restores clarity. The body is valuable precisely because it is temporary. It offers resistance, limitation, and consequence, conditions necessary for development. One does not escape the body, nor worship it. One uses it consciously, responsibly, and gratefully, knowing it will be laid aside. Chapter 11. The Brain, Intellect, and Misidentification. The brain is a physical organ designed to interface with the material world. Through it operates the intellect, which analyzes, compares, remembers, and calculates. The intellect is indispensable for earthly tasks, yet disastrous when mistaken for the core of the human being. Intellect is a servant, not a ruler. It can process information but cannot perceive truth beyond material logic. It knows how, but not why. It arranges facts but does not create meaning. Wisdom arises only when intellect serves a higher inner orientation. Modern civilization exalts intelligence while neglecting inner maturity. This produces clever systems without conscience, technology without responsibility, and arguments without insight. Intellectual dominance suppresses spiritual perception and dulls intuitive clarity. What cannot be measured is dismissed. What cannot be proven is mocked. The tragedy lies not in intellect itself, but in misidentification. When humans say, "I think," and mean, "I am," they reduce themselves to a function of the brain. This cuts them off from spiritual guidance and enslaves them to reasoning detached from reality's deeper laws. The Grail Message does not oppose intellect, it places it in order. A clear soul directs the intellect. A awakened spirit guides the soul. Only then does intelligence become constructive rather than destructive. Chapter 12. The Purpose of Earthly Embodiment. Earth is the training ground of the human spirit. Development belongs here because only in dense matter do actions produce immediate, tangible consequences. Resistance sharpens will. Limitation clarifies choice. Interaction with others reveals inner condition. Embodiment is not a punishment, nor a fall from a higher state. It is an opportunity granted under law. Through repeated experiences, the human being learns responsibility, discernment, and self-mastery. Each life offers specific conditions suited to needed development. Missed opportunities do not vanish, they return in altered form. What is not learned must be encountered again until comprehension arises. This is not circular entrapment but lawful education. Repetition continues only where understanding fails. The body is thus a training instrument. Through work, relationships, struggle, and service, the inner being is shaped. Avoidance, escapism, and fantasy waste the rare chance embodiment provides. The Grail Message calls humanity back to earth, not to materialism, but to fulfilled responsibility. To live uprightly in the body, with clarity of spirit and order in the soul, is the true purpose of human life. Only then does embodiment bear fruit. Part 5. The Interaction of Spirit, Soul, and Body. Lawful cooperation or inner conflict. Chapter 13. When order exists. Order in the human being is not mystical, emotional, or dramatic. It is quiet, stable, and unmistakable. When order exists, Each component of the human being fulfills its rightful task without overstepping its bounds. The spirit leads. It does not shout or compel, it radiates orientation. Through its volition, direction is given toward what is true, upright, and lawful. The spirit does not concern itself with comfort or approval, but with alignment to creation's laws. The soul mediates. As the fine material instrument, it receives the impulses of the spirit and shapes them into thoughts, feelings, and tendencies that can be translated into action. A clear soul is calm, receptive, and resilient. It neither exaggerates nor suppresses, it forms faithfully. The body serves. Including the brain and intellect, it executes what has been inwardly ordered. Its senses gather information, its muscles act, its intellect organizes practical steps. The body neither decides direction nor defines value, it carries out. When this order is intact, harmony arises naturally. Life may still contain challenge, loss, and effort, but inner strength remains. There is no inner war. Decisions feel grounded rather than forced. Clarity replaces agitation. Quiet clarity is the unmistakable sign of inner order. There is no need to convince, to dominate, or to escape. The human being stands firmly within life, awake, responsible, and at peace. Chapter 14. When disorder reigns. Disorder begins when the lower overrules the higher. This reversal rarely happens suddenly, it develops gradually through neglect, habit, and false identification. When the body and intellect dominate, sensory desire, comfort, fear, and ambition dictate life. The intellect rationalizes impulses instead of examining them. The soul becomes agitated, burdened with unresolved impressions, emotional turbulence, and conflicting desires. In such a state, the spirit is suppressed or ignored. Its quiet impulses are drowned out by noise, urgency, and distraction. Because the spirit does not force itself forward, its absence is often unnoticed, until unrest becomes chronic. Inner fragmentation follows. Thought contradicts feeling. Desire opposes conscience. Action conflicts with inner knowing. The human being feels divided, driven, and exhausted. Seeking relief, many turn to distraction, belief systems, or techniques rather than restoring order. This disorder is often mistaken for external misfortune or fate. In truth, it is an inner structural failure. No outer change can heal it. Without restoring rightful leadership to the spirit, suffering multiplies regardless of circumstances. The Grail Message exposes this inversion not to condemn, but to clarify. Recognition is the first step toward restoration. Chapter 15. Why most human suffering is self-created. Human suffering is not primarily imposed from outside. It arises from violations of inner order. When thoughts, feelings, and actions contradict the laws of creation, friction is inevitable. Law does not punish, it reflects. What a human being sows inwardly returns as experience, limitation, or loss. This is not judgment, but education. Pain signals misalignment, just as physical pain signals bodily injury. Blaming others, fate, society, or unseen forces only deepens entanglement. As long as responsibility is avoided, repetition continues. Liberation begins the moment one recognizes personal participation in one's condition. Recognition is not guilt or self-reproach. It is sobriety, the clear seeing of cause and effect within oneself. From this clarity arises the power to change direction. The Grail Message restores dignity by restoring responsibility. The human being is neither victim nor ruler of the universe, but a participant within lawful creation. When spirit leads, soul mediates, and body serves, suffering diminishes, not by miracle, but by alignment. Thus clarification becomes correction, and correction becomes enlightenment. Part 6. Death and Continuation. What changes, and what does not? Chapter 16. What happens at death? Death is not an event of transformation, it is an event of separation. What is commonly called death is simply the laying aside of the gross material body, nothing more and nothing less. The drama, fear, and expectation surrounding death arise from misunderstanding, not from the process itself. At the moment of death, the body separates from the soul. The physical organism, bound to earthly substance, returns to the elements from which it was formed. This dissolution follows natural law and carries no spiritual significance in itself. The body has fulfilled its task as an instrument and is released. The soul continues, bearing the full imprint of the inner life lived on earth. Thoughts, inclinations, desires, fears, and moral orientation are not shed. Nothing is erased. The soul awakens in fine material surroundings that correspond exactly to its inner condition. This awakening feels natural, not sudden or miraculous. The spirit remains untouched. It does not change at death because it was never bound to the body in the first place. The spirit does not gain wisdom, purity, or clarity through dying. It remains what it has always been, either active through conscious alignment or dormant through neglect. Death reveals, it does not improve. Nothing is added, and nothing is taken away except the physical shell. What a human being truly is becomes visible without earthly coverings. Chapter 17. No sudden awakening after death. One of humanity's most persistent illusions is the belief that death automatically brings enlightenment. This belief has led countless individuals to postpone responsibility, imagining that clarity will arrive later, without effort. In reality, character remains unchanged after death. A person who avoided responsibility on earth does not become upright through dying. One who lived in confusion does not awaken into clarity. The same inner orientation continues, only without the buffering distractions of physical life. What does change is perception. Earthly illusions fall away, social masks, intellectual justifications, and self-deception lose their power. The soul stands exposed to itself. What was hidden behind activity, belief, or distraction becomes unmistakably visible. This exposure is not punishment. It is consequence. Responsibility is either fulfilled or exposed. Fulfilled responsibility brings peace, stability, and natural orientation. Avoided responsibility brings unrest, confusion, and self-confrontation. There is no external judge, no verdict pronounced. The state of the soul is its own testimony. In this sense, death is not an awakening, it is an unveiling. Chapter 18. Why earthly life is decisive. Earthly life is not a waiting room, it is the decisive arena of development. Only in embodiment can the human being consciously shape the soul through action, restraint, effort, and responsibility. Beyond earth, there are no shortcuts. What was neglected cannot be replaced by intention or desire. Development cannot be postponed with the hope of later correction. The laws of creation do not suspend themselves after death. Embodiment provides resistance, limitation, and consequence, conditions essential for growth. The body anchors decisions into action. Time enforces seriousness. Interaction with others exposes character. These conditions do not exist in the same way beyond earth. Therefore, earthly life is an opportunity, not a burden. Each day offers the chance to restore order, to let spirit lead, to purify the soul through upright thought and action, and to use the body as a faithful instrument. The Grail Message does not threaten with death, it clarifies life. It calls humanity to sobriety, presence, and responsibility, now, while change is still possible. Part 7. False Teachings and Dangerous Simplifications. How Confusion is Preserved. Chapter 19. The Soul is the Spirit, Error. One of the most widespread and damaging errors in spiritual teaching is the claim that the soul and the spirit are the same. This idea appears harmless, even comforting, because it removes tension and effort. If the soul is already spirit, then nothing essential is required of the human being except belief or self-acceptance. Yet this belief misleads at the very foundation. The spirit is the origin, the imperishable core that stands beyond personality, emotion, and earthly formation. The soul, however, is a formed fine material structure, shaped gradually through thought, will, and conduct during earthly life. To merge the two is to erase the distinction between what one is and what one has formed. This confusion results in a loss of responsibility. If emotional sensitivity, moral intention, or psychological depth are equated with spiritual maturity, then real striving ceases. Individuals mistake inner movement for inner order, feeling for alignment, and aspiration for fulfillment. Spiritual stagnation follows. Growth is imagined instead of lived. The soul may become refined in language or emotion, yet remain unled by spirit. The spirit stays dormant, not because it is absent, but because it is never allowed to lead. The Grail Message restores clarity. The soul must be shaped, the spirit must awaken. Confusing them halts both. Chapter 20. Psychological and esoteric substitutes. In the absence of spiritual clarity, substitutes arise. Two of the most common are psychological reduction and esoteric embellishment. Both preserve confusion while offering the appearance of progress. Psychology, when elevated beyond its proper place, mistakes self-analysis for transformation. Understanding patterns, naming wounds, and managing emotions can bring relief, but they do not alter inner orientation. Therapy becomes a loop of explanation rather than a path of responsibility. Esoteric systems move in the opposite direction, using symbolic language, rituals, and experiences to create a sense of advancement. Chakras, vibrations, ascensions, and energetic upgrades promise elevation without ethical grounding. Disorder is masked with impressive terminology. In both cases, experience replaces law. What feels intense, emotional, or meaningful is assumed to be true. Yet feeling does not govern creation, law does. Without alignment to law, experience becomes deception, no matter how vivid. The Grail Message does not reject psychology or perception, it places them in order. Neither analysis nor experience refines the soul unless accompanied by upright thought, self-restraint, and responsible action. Clarity is not gained by probing inward endlessly, nor by escaping upward imaginatively. It is gained by living rightly. Chapter 21. Salvation without inner change. Perhaps the most dangerous simplification of all is the promise of salvation without inner change. This teaching appears in many forms, religious, spiritual, and modern, but its essence is the same. Believe correctly, feel hopeful, align with a teaching, and the rest will follow. Such hope comforts, but it does not liberate. Belief, when separated from lived alignment, becomes a substitute for action. Words replace deeds, assurance replaces effort, responsibility is deferred to grace, fate, or future awakening. Yet law cannot be negotiated. No belief cancels consequence. No declaration replaces character. No hope alters what has been formed within the soul. Salvation, in the lawful sense, is not rescue from consequence, it is alignment with law. Inner change is not optional, it is the path itself. Where thought becomes disciplined, where desire is purified, where action becomes responsible, salvation unfolds naturally as peace and clarity. The Grail Message does not threaten, it clarifies. It strips away comforting falsehoods so that genuine freedom becomes possible. Only inner order brings light. Only lived truth endures. Thus confusion is corrected, fascination dissolved, and the human being called back to dignity, responsibility, and lawful development, here and now. Part 8. The Grail Message Clarification. Restoring Sobriety and Dignity. Chapter 22. Simplicity over Speculation. Humanity has long been seduced by speculation. The mind thrives on theories, abstract possibilities, and imagined experiences. In the realm of spirit, soul, and body, this tendency has produced confusion, fascination, and error. Many seek hidden knowledge, secret techniques, or mystical shortcuts, believing that complexity equals depth. Yet truth is simple. Why clarity is quiet? Real understanding is not loud, sensational, or emotionally heightened. It does not depend on extraordinary experiences or advanced terminology. Clarity is quiet, measured, and immediate in its effect. It aligns thought, intention, and action with law. The mind resting in simplicity allows perception to operate correctly, unclouded by fantasy or self-deception. The strength of grounded presence. When one is present, fully attentive to life as it is, the spirit, soul, and body cooperate naturally. Grounded presence prevents distraction, speculation, and the habitual search for external validation. The strength of this presence is subtle but unshakable. It safeguards development without demanding belief or performance. Reality is teacher. The Grail Message emphasizes that life itself, observed honestly, teaches all that is required. Reality shows consequences, reflections of character, and the effects of thought and desire. When speculation is abandoned, life becomes the mirror of law, and learning occurs directly, without the distortions of imagination. Chapter 23. Upright Living Restores Inner Order. Simplicity alone is insufficient, it must be paired with upright living. The Grail Message clarifies that inner order is not automatic, it must be cultivated through thought discipline, emotional clarity, and responsible action. Thought discipline. The soul reflects the mind's orientation. Unrestrained thought fosters fragmentation, worry, and uncontrolled emotionality. By directing thought with discipline, the human being prevents chaos in the soul and allows the spirit to influence rightly. Discipline does not require force, it requires recognition of law and voluntary alignment. Emotional clarity. Emotions are neither good nor bad, they are instruments of perception. When unrefined, they cloud judgment, provoke reaction, and disturb inner harmony. Emotional clarity arises from observing feelings without attachment, understanding their origin in desire, and allowing them to serve lawful perception. Responsibility in action. Upright living manifests in deeds. Actions not aligned with law leave traces in the soul, obstructing spiritual ripening. Conversely, responsible action maintains coherence between spirit, soul, and body, reinforcing inner order naturally. Through upright living, inner order is restored, the soul aligns with spirit, and the body functions as an instrument rather than master. Complexity and fear are replaced by clarity, strength, and lawful cooperation. Chapter 24. When Spirit Awakens Naturally. Many believe awakening the spirit requires extraordinary effort, mystical techniques, or ritualistic practices. The Grail Message corrects this. Awakening occurs naturally when inner order is maintained. No rituals required. The spirit does not respond to mechanical repetition, ceremonial acts, or esoteric gestures. These can provide temporary sensation, but they neither awaken nor strengthen the spirit. Lawful alignment in thought, word, and deed suffices. No techniques needed. Techniques create the illusion of progress while the inner state remains unripe. True awakening is a consequence of lawful living, not a product of manipulation or skill acquisition. Recognition through lawful living. When the human being consistently aligns with law, the spirit becomes perceptible. Awareness, clarity, and inner guidance unfold as natural consequences. Awakening is not a goal to be achieved, it is the natural effect of disciplined, responsible, and upright life. In this way, the Grail Message restores dignity and sobriety, dissolving fascination, dispelling false shortcuts, and illuminating the path for humanity to live consciously, lawfully, and with inner freedom. Conclusion. Knowing oneself ends confusion. Humanity's long-standing confusion about spirit, soul, and body has generated fascination, error, and inner conflict. The Grail Message clarifies that knowledge of oneself is the key to ending this confusion. Understanding the distinct roles and lawful relationships of spirit, soul, and body restores clarity, stability, and inner freedom. Spirit is origin. The spirit is the true origin of the human being. It is neither created on earth nor dependent on external phenomena. It is the bearer of responsibility, the source of will, and the seat of inner perception. Misunderstanding the spirit as belief, morality, or emotional ideal leads to misdirected striving. Recognizing the spirit's position as origin allows humanity to stop projecting meaning or power onto external experiences. The spirit is not a tool, not a goal, and not a symbol, it is the core from which inner life unfolds. Soul is form. The soul mediates between spirit and body. It is the fine material instrument that records, shapes, and reflects inner states. Thought, will, and desire construct the soul, making it visible through behavior, character, and emotional coherence. Misidentifying the soul as personality, emotion, or intellect produces confusion and false expectations. Knowing the soul as form allows one to observe inner states honestly, refine perception, and live uprightly. The soul is not separate from the law, it mirrors every inner alignment or distortion. Body is tool. The body is the earthly instrument that executes the cooperation between spirit and soul. When treated as identity or master, it becomes a source of distraction, obsession, and misperception. Recognizing the body as a tool restores proportion. The body serves the soul, which mediates the spirit. Earthly life, including bodily experience, provides opportunity for development and lawful ripening, not for escape, indulgence, or projection. Order restores peace. Confusion arises wherever inner order is disrupted. When spirit, soul, and body function in lawful cooperation, clarity, sobriety, and peace naturally emerge. Knowledge of oneself is therefore not an intellectual exercise but a living, active recognition of law, responsibility, and alignment. Fear, fascination, and superstition dissolve when one observes reality honestly, aligns thought, feeling, and action, and allows natural law to guide development. By understanding the true nature of spirit, soul, and body, humanity can reclaim dignity, restore inner order, and end the age-old confusion that has led to fascination, misinterpretation, and misguided striving. True clarity is quiet, lawful, and natural, arising from knowing oneself and living accordingly. Epilogue. The sober human being stands free. To stand free is the natural consequence of sobriety in understanding the human being. This sobriety arises when spirit, soul, and body are recognized in their true lawful relationships, and life is lived in alignment with that recognition. The sober human no longer chases illusions, fears transition, or seeks spiritual status as a goal. Freedom is not an abstract ideal, it is the lived reality of clarity and uprightness. No fear of death. Death is not a punishment, a sudden catastrophe, or a mystical event. It is the lawful conclusion of the bodily phase, a natural separation of body from soul, while spirit remains untouched. The sober human understands this law and therefore meets death without terror. There is no hope-based expectation, no panic over final judgment, and no frantic seeking for last-minute salvation. Fear vanishes because the sober person lives in responsibility, alignment, and conscious development. Every thought, every choice, and every action has been examined and lived in accordance with law. The inner life is transparent, free from concealment, and therefore unshaken by the inevitable transition. No spiritual ambition. Freedom also requires abandoning ambition for power, experience, or special insight. The sober human does not strive to dominate the unseen or manipulate the fine material or spiritual realms. There is no hunger for fascination, no yearning to be advanced or exceptional. All pretenses fall away. Instead, life is lived uprightly in the visible and immediate reality, respecting law and fulfilling responsibility. Growth occurs naturally through experience, reflection, and alignment, rather than through techniques, rituals, or shortcuts. Spiritual maturity is the result of lawful development, not conquest or ego-driven desire. Life lived consciously. The sober human lives fully in the present. Each phase of existence, childhood, growth, maturity, and the approach of death, is embraced consciously. Responsibilities are met, distortions are corrected, and the inner life is refined. This conscious living brings peace, clarity, and dignity. Life is no longer a series of anxieties, fantasies, or compulsions. Every moment is an opportunity to align with law, strengthen the soul, and fulfill the spirit's purpose. In this way, freedom is not sought, it is the natural outcome of sobriety, responsibility, and lawfulness. The sober human being stands free, not through belief, not through escape, but through recognition, clarity, and upright living. Appendix. Practical guidance for lawful living. This appendix provides concrete, daily practices for restoring clarity, sobriety, and lawful alignment in life. It is designed to support the human being in recognizing the distinct roles of spirit, soul, and body, and in living in harmony with creation's law. Daily self-observation exercises. Morning reflection. Before engaging with the day, sit quietly for a few minutes. Ask, what is my inner orientation today? Are my thoughts, desires, and will aligned with truth and law? Which aspects of my behavior yesterday were lawful, and which were reactive or ego-driven? During activity, while working or interacting, periodically pause mentally to observe. Am I reacting from fear, desire, or habit? Am I conscious of spirit leading, soul mediating, and body serving? Evening review. At day's end, honestly examine moments where alignment was maintained, instances where disorder or neglect occurred. What can be consciously corrected tomorrow? These exercises develop self-recognition and prevent unconscious drifting, which is the source of inner disorder. Identifying disorder between spirit, soul, and body. Signs of spirit suppression. Decisions are dominated by emotions or intellect. Life lacks long-term clarity or purpose. Repetitive mistakes continue without reflection. Signs of soul distortion. Emotions are uncontrolled or reactive. Desires consistently override discernment. Inner life is fragmented and lacks coherence. Signs of body-centered living. Identification with appearance, comfort, or material success. Neglect of reflection, responsibility, and moral orientation. Physical activity or indulgence becomes compulsive. Recognizing these patterns allows corrective action before consequences accumulate, as law mirrors inner reality. Grounding routines for sobriety and clarity. Breath awareness. Focus on natural breathing for 3 to 5 minutes, letting thoughts settle. Physical presence. Engage fully with the body's activity, walking, eating, or working, with attention, not distraction. Emotional check-in. Name emotions without judgment, observing them as temporary signals, not as identity. Connection with law. Mentally align decisions with what is true, just, and upright, instead of fleeting desire. These routines anchor awareness, preventing dissociation into fantasy, obsession, or uncontrolled desire. Practices for responsibility in thought, word, and deed. Thoughts. Before acting, ask, does this thought serve truth, law, or responsibility? Words. Speak only when clarity and uprightness guide, avoiding exaggeration, concealment, or manipulation. Deeds. Ensure actions reflect service, accountability, and lawful alignment, not ego, fear, or desire. Lawful living begins in the inner life, extending outward naturally. Thought, word, and deed are inseparable. Weekly review for alignment with creation's law. Compile observations. Record key insights from daily exercises. Assess growth. Identify areas where inner order has strengthened and where disorder persists. Plan corrective focus. Select 1 or 2 practical adjustments for the upcoming week. Align with life purpose. Reflect on how alignment with spirit, soul, and body enhances development, responsibility, and conscious continuation. This review reinforces accountability, develops consistency, and prevents accumulation of distortions that delay inner maturation. Summary guidance. Daily awareness ensures inner alignment. Recognition of disorder between spirit, soul, and body prevents chaos. Grounding and presence maintain sobriety. Responsibility in thought, word, and deed manifests law outwardly. Weekly reflection consolidates growth and ensures continued lawful living. Following these practices, the human being progressively stands free, conscious, and mature, living in lawful harmony with creation, without fear, fascination, or false aspiration.